I appreciate you picking this one out because I mean, I didn't know it existed. I was
nervous because I hadn't seen it, obviously.
How many of the other Joan Crawford?
Not everything.
Sure.
Like, there's definitely,
she's done like a ton of stuff.
She's made a lot of movies, and I've seen a good handful.
It's interesting in the clippings you had sent to that the way they talk about her, which I'm not
a fan.
It's so of the time, of course, but they're like, she was loaned out to United Artists by, she's a piece. And then they get mad that like, oh, the thing didn't work the way we wanted it to. Like they're
blame her. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Justice for Joan.
That's how I feel. Oh, hey Chelsea.
Hey Victoria.
You know what I need?
What?
A breath of fresh movie.
Dude, same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a movie I like to see.
This is a breath of fresh movie.
Yes.
A weekly podcast where me, Victoria Harley,
and me, Chelsea Pope,
we watch a movie neither one of us has ever seen before, and then we talk about it.
Yes, we do. We may not talk about everything. But we're gonna like talk about anything. We don't have a specific anything we want. We're the Jack FM of that's a hyper specific regional station, but the whole idea is just we're gonna probably launch into spoilers at any point spontaneously. We may even spoil random other things.
Don't care. You heard.
You heard. No, but
what we're talking about today is I'm so excited because I have long alluded to my fandom passion for Joan Crawford.
Victoria's a big Joan Crawford fan. I wanted to, if that's okay for me to address our listeners, just she has a cat, a beautiful actually cat, who has almost this sort of like she has this sort of like made up like these eyes that kind of pop like they're fully lined almost, and she named her cat Joan Crawford. What was the name of the cat before? Because you had a name before that. It was like a.
It was like Taboo.
Oh yeah, it was Taboo, and then that, and then I remember
it wasn't right though.
Taboo didn't fit.
And
then you did Joan Crawford, and she was still a little kitten, and I was like, that seems like much, but she's grown into it. She's a full.
It seems like much. I texted to you, and you were like, "That's aces."
I said, well, because I was like, oh, I know you love it, and she'll, like I named my cat Princess, like who am I to talk? I named my cat Princess Leia. She'd had 4 other names before. Her name before that was Jennifer. It's like, it's whatever,
Yeah, it's whatever you want it
even
to be.
When
I mostly call her Kitty.
And I mostly called my mamas. It's just whatever. Like you just do that,
Yeah, or Kitty Beans.
But it's, that all being said, just
I am a fan. I'd say more of a nerd.
Which is cool.
Stan, whatever.
You're a Stan.
Whatever, yeah.
Hey, again, like that parallel. I like Princess. I'm a Star Wars Stan, and you're a Joan Crawford Stan.
I think history has done her dirty, and there's more to her. But we won't go down that road because there's not enough time. But we are talking today about the 1932 film Rain, which was a pre-code movie, like pre-code.
What does that entail, pre-code?
I mean, basically, there were about approximately 14 rules that were established by the studios,
and that's the code,
and that's the production code.
And
it was like at first it was done internally as a way to head off like the censorship that they were feeling like was just going to happen, because there were a lot of literally a bunch of church folk women all over the nation were like, ah.
And what, this is like mid-30s this came around? Gotcha.
Yeah,
and this came out in 1932.
This is 32. So gotcha. There was officially the Hays Code, which if I'm not mistaken was federal. I don't remember what year that was instituted, but it was kind of a slow process, of getting out of it. It was kind of, we peeled it back a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
But it was just this like response by the studios because financially they weren't super secure, and they were so terrified of losing a market. But the number of things that you couldn't do, you couldn't show any kind of disrespect to a religious symbol or person. You couldn't show adultery. You couldn't show anything that was crime oriented. You couldn't show too much of a woman's leg. You couldn't show.
Well, what's the point in going to the movies?
I mean, what's the point?
Come on.
Yeah. And the thing that's funny is all those specifics. Like somebody Somebody sat down and watched a bunch of movies. And it's like, it's the sexual pleasure that people are after. I'm like, I think that's what you're after.
Yeah, no, it's like, only for me. Yeah. Only for me.
And so somebody was
the main dude in this movie. This movie is so of that.
It is.
It's so critical of that mentality.
Exactly, which is what makes it great.
It's interesting because then they did try to make this story, because it's been reiterated a few times, this the Sadie Thompson, story. I don't know if parable is the right word. Anti-parable, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it started as a short story. It's Somerset Maugham, the guy who did like Of Human Bondage. He wrote a story that I think was originally called Sadie Thompson, but then I think it was retitled Rain. So that, and then
so vague.
I know.
I hate when movies are, the Rain thing is just like, oh, is it about?
It did deliver on Rain.
Right away. The first shot of this movie is Rain. I was like, there you go.
There's your Rain.
If nothing else, we got our Rain.
Yeah. And this is a movie. Oh, we'll just get the log line out here. This is a movie about a sex worker newly arrived in the South Pacific, finds herself at odds with a missionary determined to save her soul. It was adapted from a play, which was adapted from a short story. The play starred actress Jeanne Eagles, who apparently...
She must have been hot stuff at the time, because everybody was comparing Joan to her.
Yeah, and she was on stage 10 years before. It was like 1922 on Broadway.
Well, why didn't she do it? Was there any discussion of why she didn't?
Well, because, Broadway stars aren't pretty enough to be in Hollywood pictures. So
but isn't that where they transfer from, though, at the same
time?
Right?
They did. They definitely poached a lot of people, but there was this whole thing where, like, as long as you were, for a while there, when films were silent, especially, if you were pretty... That was it. Like, if people told you, you could be in movies, you basically were like, huh, and I'd get on a train and go to Hollywood.
It kind of reminds me of, like, with the little foxes with Tallulah versus Betty.
Exactly.
And it's like,
which is funny because Betty came from the theater too.
Right. So that's why I find that interesting.
Some people make the jump, some people don't.
Like, how does that...
No, you're absolutely
how that works or doesn't work.
And Tallulah Bankhead, it's funny that you bring her up. She was in the theatrical Broadway revival of Rain that happened in 1935. That was
probably awesome.
Like 3 years after this.
I would have loved to have seen her do
and I guess
type of character.
Tallulah and Joan, they weren't like tight friends, but they always really respected each other.
Sure.
And I have to say this is Tallulah Bankhead is the one who just said Joan was the, quote, woman with the fuck me shoes.
It's not,
just worth mentioning.
They do emphasize shoes in this.
They do.
She had good shoes in these.
Yeah, and we mentioned that Joan Crawford is in this. We also have Walter Houston, who came from the theater.
And he's the missionary.
Gotcha. Alfred Davidson.
Yes.
Then we have Beulah Bondi, who is Mrs. Davidson, his wife. She played Jimmy Stewart's mother in It's a Wonderful Life, if you ever saw that.
She's like the prudish older lady, right?
Yes.
So,
also,
I got confused about the two women, I'm going to be honest.
I know.
I was a little confused about was she a mom or a what? And then who was the other lady who kind of like looked like an adjacent, like more clean cut, like Joan?
I don't remember.
With the hat?
I was confused about that. I think she's not their daughter, but
some sort of,
I don't know.
I was she almost felt like a throwaway.
She wasn't. We can't remember.
She did fine. But not to diss her.
I didn't write her name down. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Well, then we have Walter Catlett, who played. Okay, so his character is Quartermaster Bates, but I saw Master Bates like written a lot of places, and I'm like, fuck that guy.
They had to have been aware, right?
I mean, somebody had to have been.
That word existed.
I'm sorry. Yes, it did.
Right?
And I mean, maybe you had to be really bookish to know it or something.
Was that like the joke?
That's what I'm wondering. Like somebody like slipped that in or something.
How winky is this?
I don't know.
Are we allowed to laugh?
I don't know. Then there was William Gargan, who played Sergeant Tim O'Hara, quote unquote handsome, who was not handsome.
He was I will say he was a himbo.
He was a himbo.
And I respect that he was very like he knew her professional. Like I liked how accepting he was.
What
of
he
her.
said about like
he wanted to take care of her, but he wasn't shaming her at the same time.
Yeah, what did he say? Like that thing about sometimes knowing the bad is not the worst way to start or something. Like
I don't remember what the line. There were some good choices.
There were.
This felt like a play. This
it is very play.
The best parts of this movie. they're like the meat and potatoes of this are like roughly like 55 minutes in, I'd say, to the end. Like it's once it really settles into the little
it goes
cabana thing that they're all quarantined in.
It's a quarantine movie, which is funny.
Movie.
No one was talking about that.
No, they're all caught up on Contagion, and
we are shaking our heads.
Everybody
right
wanted
now.
to watch Gwyneth Paltrow's head get spliced. I said we'd spoil any movie, and we will. So there you go.
We actually have a chart. We're in a battle actually to spoil, like, who can spoil more.
Who can spoil more
in this year?
Movie. Yeah, but then we gotta
ding ding
ding ding ding.
That's another one on the board.
Yeah, dude.
Damn it.
It's all in pennies. It's all we give each other pennies.
Yeah, I like that. Or matchsticks. It's like the
matchsticks.
Like, you know how you used to bet, like when you were a kid. You just had.
Did you bet with matchsticks as a child?
I think we used.
Was
pennies.
That like a Midwest thing?
I think we actually used poker chips. Like, I think we had plastic poker chips.
I just went home and watched TV.
Cards and gambling to me was like very grown up. So to me, that was cool.
And that's why you have a problem.
Yes.
I tease.
No, it's the truth. We've already kind of spoiled it. I mean, this is Checkpoint Chelsea moment. Which I'm calling this Checkpoint Chelsea.
Is that a thing
Which
now?
is like, yeah, it's now a thing. Should people listen? They should listen to us, I think, actually, and then watch it.
I think this is one of those movies where it's okay to like already know the ending.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those stories that's been so
simple.
It's pretty straightforward. It's been reiterated multiple times over. And I'll be honest, actually about maybe 5 to 10 in on this, I wanted to look up and just see where the hell was this going.
Yeah.
Because there's so many like just cuts of like rain and this and that. And then
we're
people
just checking in.
There's a lot of people just kind of pitter pattering back and forth. And as charming as Joan Crawford is, although she does come in, like they show the cast in order of appearance. They do all the full credits at the beginning.
And she's listed last.
She's listed at the end, and I'm just like, oh man, this is going to be one of those like heavily preamble type of movies.
True.
So I just wanted to see where it was going. And actually knowing where it was going made me appreciate and want to pay attention more to what was leading up. Through
I mean, I kind of agree because I think
the ending kind of saves it.
Yeah,
in
it
a
does.
way.
It really does. And I
think like a full added star for me.
Yeah, and I think just the additional context, even that I will be providing in this episode, I think made me appreciate her, particularly Joan Crawford's performance, all the more.
She carries it.
She worked really hard because she had no support outside. We'll talk more about it. Okay, things that stood out to me, though, a couple things. At one point she utters like a phrase and she's like, "That's down the hatch in Jap." And it's like, oh god.
Oh yeah. She does do. There are some things that don't age well. I mean, again, they're in, where are they located at?
Well, it's supposed to be in Samoa, but they're trying to get to one city, but they're in Pago Pago.
There are going to be culturally insensitive things that happen in this film.
Yeah, I actually thought it would be worse, and it could have been.
It definitely could have.
And actually,
I wonder if the play was worse.
I don't know.
Other iterations,
I think the film actually expanded the play, right? Allowed us to see all of that. I think the play was more about it being contained in one set,
right?
And it's like, oh, I could see how this would work. As just a single
and that's what the best of it is, when it's just between the characters. But it's almost kind of like the more they try to illustrate the surroundings, like the more they're kind of digging themselves into this.
I agree.
This sort of
I
don't know if I want to see your take on the people.
Although I did think that the character Mr. Horn, Joe Horn, played by Guy Kibbe, I liked that he was given so much space to talk about how these missionaries come here and ruin these people.
I thought that was actually pretty progressive. It's actually a very like ahead of its time mindset.
I've like literally said the same things like about like, God, they just can't leave. I learned not too long ago that Brigham Young University, it's got a large population of international students, but they have a huge presence in Micronesia, Polynesia.
Okay, there's a lot of missionary work in the
so this is like totally in track with that. And it's like, and just this idea that I mean there were some moments he did say something about like, oh, they don't need anything, they have everything they need, and there's an absence of thinking. It's like, well, let's walk that back a little bit.
And then now we're going on we're swinging to the other
we're going
we're overly romanticizing.
Yes, because also like when you learn more and more about their seafaring abilities and the way that there was smart people working shit out. Like to say nobody was thinking is absurd. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I did think the fact that he was generally setting up this idea that, oh, some of these reformers, that's the phrase. They used the word reformer, not missionary, but we know what they were talking about. He was immediately setting up the idea that they can be really hypocritical.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, this, okay.
Well, if you enjoyed There Will Be Blood and some of the thematic elements there with Paul Dano and the hypocrisy going on with his church, you'll definitely see some parallels going on with this story, like big time, and how that sort of mentality can become very pervasive, and anyone who is ambitious but struggling and outside of that world can through their own self-doubt and attempts to, I guess, just find meaning and moralize, can get entangled, I guess is the word.
Like nosy assholes suck, basically.
Pretty much. He's like a Paul Dano type of character in this.
I so self-righteous.
Yeah.
So evangelical. Like, oh, it's
and that's the criticism, which is like,
it's the worst.
I'm glad I sort of looked up what came ahead, because it felt
sustained you.
It felt like they were really bearing the lead on that.
early
on. And I just was like, is this going to be some sort of tedious morality tale, like virtuose, like she's going to be cleansed and blah, blah, blah.
She had that like moment of conversion too early in the story for that to be the resolution, you know? But I hear you.
But see,
they really bury the lead.
I still needed to sort of, for me personally, it was a source of comfort to see that there was going to be some sort of outrageous rug pull.
Yes.
I appreciated that.
I had the rug pulled when she asked for canned tamales. Is that a thing? Am I crazy? Is tamale
I guess you can can anything.
I mean, is there something else besides what I'm thinking of, which is like, you know, the little wrapped in a corn husk? Is there some other tamale that I don't know about?
I don't know.
Write into abreathoffreshmovie@gmail.com.
Yeah,
you can answer that. Also, at one point, Joan Crawford's character, Sadie, says, I've got the Fantas.
The Fantas.
And I was like, what the fuck does that mean?
She said a few like very kind of vernacular type of things that I was like a little throwed by.
There was tons of vernacular, which I think was clearly like the script and her, I'm sure as well, but like, trying to like, she's trash. You know, like they really want you to know she's trash. Like,
I don't know. I still thought she looked great.
I mean, she's definitely done up, and at the time, I think,
she was. Even then, they were like criticizing.
Yeah, someone in Variety.
Isn't that kind of intentional that she was done up
and
like that?
Some critic at Variety, I think, was like, streetwalkers don't get that done up. And then people were like, how do you know?
Actually, I've met prostitutes. I mean, they don't go that hard.
I do think it would be a fantastic, like many drag performers have tapped into Joan Crawford, you know, some more flattering than others.
Sure.
It tends to be a bit of a horror, like grotesque.
Because it gets conflated with the whole Faye Dunaway thing, right?
Precisely, which is
it's so embedded, it's so enmeshed into that.
Like this would be actually like a really great like costume, or
imagine
like,
just doing that entrance, foot, hand, foot.
I mean, plus you got like the white. She has so many fucking accessories. Like, I mean, I do think like she needed to take off a few. And
she had a lot on.
Once she like lost the little hat or big hat and the fur, I actually thought she was starting to look really chic.
I kind of liked when she had that sort of stripped down.
I liked her hair.
I liked it all kind of brushed through, or whatever, you know, aesthetically.
Yeah.
I just didn't like that she was so submissive at that point. I guess.
Oh yeah.
But it's not. That's not to say I wasn't. You know.
Well, this was. Like,
I thought she did a good job.
This was so much just a story about men controlling pussy.
Yeah, just gaslighting, and then it's like a one long joke.
Yeah,
men are all the same kind of thing. I guess in the written short story, it's like it ends with her just like laughing and be like, men are all the same.
Yeah,
she didn't even. She doesn't quite do that in this movie, but it is the same sort of finale of just like, men are all the same.
They are, because like that, and I mean that's the thing. I had a couple of I read stuff as well, and it confirmed, you know, no, this is what happened, but I felt there was some ambiguity around the night with the door creaking in the dark, you know, which is like, okay, was that a consensual thing? Was it rape? Was it, you know, what you know what I'm saying?
Interestingly, like looking on when I went to the wiki, because I had questions, of course,
I mean, it was
and I went to, and the Wikipedia says she seduced him.
I read that.
Which I'm like, I don't. Did she? Because she went to bed, and then he just kind of stood out there, and we see his face change, and then he goes.
Also, like, he said a phrase. I wrote it down.
Radiant and beautiful.
Radiant and beautiful. He said it a second time, and I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, he's like into it. And this was after there was the scene with the other dudes that are like, he's having troubling dreams.
Yeah. I mean, all the stuff with Davidson just, like, caring about her soul. It's like,
Tell us about it, Janet.
Seriously. Can tamales. Good old Nietzsche. That was just a throwaway line I thought was fun.
There you go.
I did think like some of the drumming and some of those like the cutting in of the native life. Yeah. I didn't hate that. I thought it was okay.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of I don't know. I had to read it in high school, the Poisonwood Bible.
I didn't
Barbara
read that.
Kingsolver's book. It's I don't know what year specifically it came out, but I think it was just something. It was one of those kind of newer types of books that our English teacher was trying to implement. Whatever.
I think my mom was in a book group and they may have read that.
I think it was in like an Oprah. Like I think it was part of the Oprah at some point. But it's a family that's a missionary. It's a very like super white missionary, like heavily intense father and the wife, and then they have all these like little kids, mostly daughters, and they all go to South Africa, and then it just all kind of goes to shit because of the father's pride.
Oh, good.
You know? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Goody. No, but just I felt that there were things reminded me of that from this, the idea of that sort of hubris of feeling that you were entitled to enter that space and moralize and
that you're gonna make this your responsibility.
Because it's essentially it's just calling. You can just it's still taking. It's still taking. It's still
like,
claiming.
Whether you're guilty or innocent, you should go to jail. It's like what?
Yeah, no, that was such a. It was. He just needed proof of her submission.
Yeah,
and that was like his kink.
Yeah,
was being able to. Yeah. Was being able to just win that proverbial arm wrestle with her.
And I mean, I was trying to decide if like. I mean, her heart wasn't in it, ever.
You don't think so?
I mean, I don't know. That's my question. A part of me feels like she did.
Sure.
Somebody pointed out in one of the things I read that in that scene where he's reciting the Lord's Prayer and she kind of like has this conversion.
And she recites it back.
Yeah.
She's familiar with the literature.
I get the sense that that's real, that's not a performance. Although the literal performance of that by Crawford, apparently she doesn't blink once.
I felt that intensity of sort of like she needed to in that moment, almost like it's like she was willing. It's the willfulness. It's this intent. Like I need to match his energy.
Yeah. And I mean the allusion to this life and being framed for a crime, which we never find out what.
It's always everything is sort of just again, which is why I had to kind of go back and see where else was this.
Yeah.
What are the details of the original short story? What did Wikipedia? Whatever, because there's a lot of just implied talk, and even just sort of it was sort of brushed off of like, oh no, he did it himself at the end when they find him, and
right. And I was like, did he kill himself?
Yeah,
I feel like maybe she killed him.
Whoa, like it was a little messy there.
But then she's surprised in the morning.
Yeah, but
but she's also like still playing her hot jazz music. Like the moment where they find his body and then we get that shot where the camera closes in on the beaded curtain and the closed door.
Right.
I thought that was going to be the end of the movie. And I'm like, oh
yeah, right.
Oh, but then there was more.
It's almost a different kind. It was almost like a different story.
It's more like a play in that like, everything has to be settled.
Has to be kind of, and then the fact that she's like surprised by it, but like, I like what it is apparently is in the short story is just her laughing and saying like her final line is just men are all the same.
We're all the same.
You all want one thing.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I find she doesn't ever say anything directly like that, which I kind of almost wish. I don't know.
It's just like Davidson.
She didn't need to, I guess.
I mean,
but
he was a religious zealot, but I just like didn't take him for the suicide type, he seems so self-important. I feel like somehow he would like
he just got corrupted. That's why it's like I noticing from not just the clippings you had sent, but just other reviews and takes are just I think on the money and also how I felt watching it, where there was a lot of build up and tedium, and you sort of like what are we getting at here?
Yeah.
What exact like we're when you look back after you finish it, you see the seeds, right? But it feels like there's different seeds for different kinds of stories that
absolutely.
could happen,
I mean,
I guess.
The Marines, the doctor who's like
Right.
more empathetic. I loved that doctor character, by the way, who was like so
a lot
open-minded.
of the guys were actually pretty
Decent.
pretty good dudes,
because you had
actually.
to they had to create the contrast, you know. It's like
from the get, the religious people seemed like the obvious dicks.
Obvious.
But then when it seemed like it was leaning in that direction, I was like, is this why this movie isn't as well revered or remembered?
I think it was a surprise to Depression era audiences. Like, I don't think they were expecting something this like cynical.
Sure.
And I mean, Joan's, you know, certainly a lot of critics didn't like it, but a lot of Joan Crawford's fans really didn't, because up to now, Joan had always played like a good girl. Even if she was kind of a bad girl, she always did the right thing in the end.
Sure.
Whereas in this one, she's like, I think she's great. I mean,
she's the
she
thing
looks
that
out for
kept
her,
me into it.
Yeah, but
when she finally shows up,
in her own estimation at the time and other people's, was like, no, Sadie is corrupt and stays corrupt.
Yeah.
Again, I wouldn't use that terminology. I think watching it from a modern, we're in 2022. To us, it's like, this is a woman taking care of her own skin, and like she'll drop that guy in Sydney and move on. You know, like that's not gonna last. You know, like
whatever.
Like she'll be fine.
But
like, and I want her to be fine. I want her to escape.
I think it's more tragic just to see that someone, because she is ultimately someone who has empathy and is caring and and has that self reflection.
Yeah.
And that's why she can become so susceptible and succumbs to this guy. That's the more tragic thing to see, which I found like a little hard to watch, where when she does seem to have converted.
I know.
Then when
she's all virginal and
she seems really, really taken by this guy, and that just sort of that was sad to see, but not I wouldn't say entirely untrue to life. I would say, not every woman reacts that way, but just I could see that, and then being the case, trying to find some sort of purpose, tethering, meaning, or I guess, redemption. You know, if you're feeling lost, I'm sure, and so that's sad to see someone take advantage of that.
Absolutely.
And so all the merrier that at the end it's like,
kill yourself, dude.
Yeah, fuck you, man.
You did the right thing. Yeah. Apparently Walter Houston was
divine justice in a way.
It was such an asshole to Joan Crawford on the set that she was like, I wish he had cut his throat at the end of the movie.
Oh shit. So there's very, very true emotions exchanged here.
Oh my goodness. I
didn't feel the chemistry there between them. I will say that was not.
Also, like, okay, the guy who's not playing the handsome. That dude was literally...
Was he supposed to be handsome? Oh, you're talking about O'Hara, right?
Yeah, at this point. O'Hara, yeah. And, like, she calls him handsome.
Which I thought was actually kind of cute.
Which is sweet, but, like, he was...
No, he was a little homely.
I mean, he was not... I
thought that was the point, was that he was sort of like a nice, homely...
Maybe.
He reminded me of, like...
but, like
John C. Reilly's character in Chicago. That kind of
guy.
And
maybe that is what they were going for. I think... He's an old 26, and
was he really 26?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And she's like, and he does not have the animal magnetism that, like, and I agree, like a Marine on an island, this guy should be sweaty and sexy, like, you know, and instead we get this kind of like dude who looks like he runs Boy Scout swap meet.
My pitch is that I think the missionary should have been a hottie toddy.
Okay.
He should have been like a repressed hottie toddy. He was like very into him. Like, you know, you can see
himself,
and there's sort of that implied like vanity in his character, which we see manifested in the story. And I actually kind of appreciate that O'Hara's a little homely.
Okay.
I thought it served.
Counterpoint.
That's my counterpoint. But that's not to say that I of course I wanted her to be with a baddie. I mean, like I think it would have been nice for her to have. I would have liked any eye candy in this movie, and there's none.
There's none
to be found.
I mean, Joan's it.
We're starved.
There's nothing.
It's Joan.
Yeah. This was just some details about the filming. There's some goss.
Yeah.
This isn't the goss part, but it was filmed over 5 weeks on Catalina Island, even though it's set in Samoa. So that's how they're faking it. And then, you know, other parts I think were filmed on a soundstage. Also, the sound design is great. Like the rain and the
it's good.
You know, and the drumming. Oh my God. Gloria Swanson starred in the silent film version in 1928. But it's just interesting. The silent film's 28, sound film 1932. It's like we're talking about 4 years difference.
That's
like,
yeah. I mean, that's fresh.
That's how wildly different, and that's how much the film industry changed in that little amount of time. Like sound really just changed everything.
It's interesting too how quickly people wanted to, like, this has always been a thing in Hollywood, people wanting to instant refresh. Just the same with like Batman, right? With the Batman and Batman,
Spider-Man
whatever.
too. We're seeing that.
Like, I mean, we get mad that people are so quick to readapt. And that's always been
And it's
a
interesting,
thing.
right? Because I think Joan kind of got hung out to dry here. Everyone's like, why is she cast in this? Like, you're adapting this thing that's a recent memory both on stage and in screen. So you're like the third in a line of people.
That's a lot of pressure on that.
Yeah, and then she was, as you said, loaned out because at that time, the big studios, they would have their own contract players. She was a contract player at MGM. Yeah. So MGM occasionally would, like loan somebody out to another studio, which basically means she goes to the office and she doesn't know anybody.
I can only imagine too, being in that kind of a film in particular, what an isolating experience that might feel like when you're just surrounded by dudes and just
and you don't know
there's
any
like literally
of them.
only like two other women in this movie, or like there's the mom at the very beginning, right? And then
there's the native wife, but they don't have really have any scenes together except maybe at the end. It's not. No, she's surrounded by a lot of dudes.
You got to hold your own in that kind of environment.
Absolutely. And then, at this time, just in her own life, and we will talk about the director, but I have to talk about John.
Yes.
But at this time, she was married to Douglas Fairbanks Jr. That's her first marriage, but it's falling apart at this point. MGM, though. Right. No. Let's make this work because you guys are great together because that's great PR and all the, so they're working hard. She goes to Catalina by herself. She's like, don't come with me. You're a distraction. I'm going to work. But means that this woman was like alone every night in her cabin. Like,
she's like going through a separation / divorce at the time of this film.
And Douglas Fairbanks Jr., DFJ, he's on like a boat trip with his boys. Like he's just like out there.
How old was he?
I don't.
It sounds like he was of age.
They were both. Yeah. No, when I say boys, I mean like Laurence Olivier was one of his friends. I think Robert Montgomery.
They were the OG Pussy Posse.
Yes, exactly.
Got you.
Pussy Posse.
They were that times. Leonardo DiCaprio, Tobey Maguire.
They're all out on a boat together. So Crawford also at this time and for a while has also been having an affair with Clark Gable, which MGM is real content to like.
Good for her.
Yeah, good for her. They're real content to not let that happen or anyone get wind of it. So putting her on Catalina is like great.
Public.
I know, but
what
like
a great PR couple that could have been.
Kept them separate.
Yeah.
So that was some of it too. So she hated working on it. At the first cast meeting, Walter Houston described her as a real life tramp.
Ew.
William Gargan, who was her love interest. O'Hara. When he met her, he said, "I've never seen any of your films and I never want to."
What a dick. Ew, I take back what I said about you being a himbo.
Yeah.
I mean, again,
there's what's on screen and then there's what's...
What a dick.
Yeah, and then Walter Catlett, who played Master Bates.
Yeah.
Like he has a leg to stand on. This is alleged, but I love this so much. He said, "Listen, fish cake. When Jan Eagles died, Rain died with her."
Oh, wow.
What a dick.
So that's why she wasn't in it. She passed away.
I guess so.
Probably what the main thing was.
Yeah. With the exception of Walter Houston, though, it's like
so much animosity.
Who the fuck remembers Walter Catlett? You know what I mean? Like,
did she like lobby for this part, or what was the deal? Like, did you see any sort of like people vying for this role, or was no one wanted to touch it? Maybe because of the legacy.
Everyone was like, she's miscast. Like, she shouldn't be. But
who would have been the right?
I don't know.
See,
the thing is, she just had done Grand Hotel, where she played a minxie secretary. Right.
That's like one of her big breakout roles.
Definitely. It was a huge cast, big deal, big MGM thing.
Yeah.
And so she was kind of naughty in that. So I think they felt like, oh, that'll be a good fit for this.
Sure.
But
it's like, it could be a fun showcase, but maybe in that kind of environment.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But the other thing to mention is that Walter Houston, Gargan, Catlett, they were all people who worked in Broadway. She was the only one who was just a motion picture background. Like she herself admitted that I didn't understand how to work from the inside out yet. So some of the, the accessories, the makeup, it was kind of her attempt to get into a character, right?
Yeah.
You know, which very normal for a motion picture.
Yeah.
But she's surrounded by these people who have a very different, you know, they wanted these long takes. And again, it felt more like theater, and she didn't have that stamina.
It's so ironic and interesting, like the parallels between the stage and screen happening with the way this is filmed, almost like a play, and that in spite of these self-doubts, she's the standout in this.
I know.
But simultaneously, this is a story of a woman who succumbs to her own self-doubt.
Exactly.
And
she was doing
she's
method,
surrounded by
she-
people that are like just gaslighting the shit out of her abilities.
Yeah.
And again, like
Yeah.
and you know, again, at the time, this may not have been well received, but us watching it in 2022, like she carries it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was annoyed that she didn't come in sooner.
Oh, no, completely.
You know?
In addition to her co-stars just being dicks, the director in general, Lewis Millstone, was known as a man's director. So generally he was like, I don't really care about working with women.
Why are you even doing this?
I don't know. Exactly.
Like what the motivations behind these.
Yeah. And then the
things.
studio head for United Artists, which was the studio that borrowed her, Joseph Schenck, who, by the way, is known as Joe Skunk because of the way he treats people.
Ew.
But he was like really disdainful of her and didn't make her feel welcome. Like everyone, and I don't get why would you undermine your own
She's just been through
movie?
such the shit.
Yes,
Joan.
this is
You
why I
know?
want to set this up, because it's
Yeah.
like, and you're right, in a way. I don't think this is okay. I don't like when directors torture an actress to get a tortured performance.
Right.
I don't like that.
Yeah,
you
no,
know, that's
same.
disgusting.
Yeah.
But they sort of, everyone, whether they realized it or not, were kind of creating a situation for her to draw on in the film. Like she was,
Right.
so, and she even said that later, like, you know, I was so miserable, but I felt quarantined just like my character.
Yeah, that's the sort of, it feeds into itself in
Yeah.
a way, but it doesn't necessarily make it okay. But that's the
No,
whole
no, no,
whole
no.
sort of the paradox of going through the shit, and then it's like, oh well, use that,
Yeah.
put it into it, you know.
Yeah.
And but yeah, she
Use
ends
it.
up being the standout in
Yeah.
this otherwise sort of uninteresting
Yeah, no.
story, if I'm being honest.
Oh yeah. The last straw really is that during filming, Crawford discovered she was pregnant. Yeah.
With her exes.
I mean, unclear if it was
whatever, but
Douglas's or
even
Clark
still.
Gable's. I mean, I read one biography that was real mean and was like, or a dozen other men. I'm like, fuck you.
asshole.
Like, fuck you. Anyway,
What a fucking jerk.
and the studio, of course, who's invested in their relationship, right? Attempt to try to contact Fairbanks, but he's out with the boys on the boat. They can't get in touch with him. So the studio doctor arranges an abortion, and she goes through that all by herself.
Wow.
And then Fairbanks shows up late, and she's like, get the fuck out of here. I don't want to see you.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much like how the rest of it went for her.
Wow. That's some fucking shit, man.
That's a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Like that. And this is the thing, like, it is a man's world, and like was so much then. The fact that we know her name,
Yeah.
like that she punched through, that she had the career. Fuck all these people.
I mean, my thing is like, we already know that they, like, Hollywood, especially in that era, well, I mean, even now in a lot of areas, they don't, it's not about like integrity or about like
No.
artistic merit, but just like, why the fuck are any of you people telling this story?
Yeah.
I think about that
Bingo.
a little. I find that darkly
upsetting.
funny, not ha-ha funny, but just sort of like,
Oh God, no, funny.
what the
Yeah.
you
Oh
fucking
no,
dicks.
Dude, I worked on like
I mean,
Do
it's
you know
all
how-
about money. I know
No,
you
I
don't care.
know.
They don't. There's no integrity.
No, but like
just,
the number of Lifetime movies that are directed by men.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't understand why you're doing this.
It's just this. It's a very sort of diminutive exploit. I think about it like the Jack Nicholson character in As Good as It Gets.
yeah.
When it's like he has that fan. She's like, I love your books, blah blah blah. How do you do it? And he's like, well, I think about a man and I take away reason and do this. He's just like this hateful.
Yeah.
Dick.
That's what'll happen.
And just that's so sad how on the nose that actually is.
I know,
that
right?
that mentality.
Yeah, it's, you know, and to see it just like so alive. Like, it's
Yeah.
funny that this was a story essentially about men trying to put their flag on a woman's body. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, ultimately it was like, who's going to get to control her or who's going to win her?
Right.
You know, and
I like the optimistic take that you posited of her. You know, she doesn't have to. She'll be in city. She can do whatever.
Yeah,
at that point.
I like to imagine afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, all right, see you, dude.
She's savvy.
I'm out of here.
She's savvy.
I'm gonna go get a new dress.
She implies that in her many speeches in this film.
And I mean, there's a lot of emotional speeches, but her sort of saying like, you know, you'd burn your own grandmother, you know, if you'd like to save her, or people are like, oh, they'd break your back to save your soul. There's so much.
I got so mad when she's like at the stair. Like it's just so encapsulating of that experience of like she's making these solid points about what
the hypocrisy.
Like she was making very salient points about his hubris and hypocrisy and pride.
It's so
and all he's just hallowed be thy name by the kingdom of heaven. Blah blah. You fucking.
I know.
I'm gonna punch you.
But that's
punch you in the dick.
It's why I love pre-code stuff though. It's so contemporary. It's so modern in tone because this shit's fucked up. Like good is not always good. Evil is not always evil.
Her delivery was strong in that. I mean, again, she does a great job in this film.
I think so. Critics weren't crazy about it, from what I mean, some were okay.
Sure. Well,
but her fans hated it, and this was the first time Joan Crawford ever got hate mail. No, I don't
think it's a bummer because then she disavows it, and then she disavows. Yeah, and then she goes, "This is my worst performance." And
although I do have a quote from her, and then we can talk about the critics. I don't know what year this was, but this is kind of the kindest thing she says about herself. Rain was an ordeal for me. At the time, I thought it was my worst performance yet. But now I think I was wrong because of my motion picture background. All of those Broadway actors treated me like I really was Sadie Thompson. And being in a strange studio where I didn't know anyone made me feel quarantined, just like her. But looking back, I'm proud of my Sadie Thompson.
I'm glad.
I too.
I'm glad she takes it back.
Yeah.
Takes over.
And I know I sent you some things. I just want to share this one detail.
Oh, please do. Please do. I just wanted to cue it up. Go ahead.
Totally. This is hopefully would be a good transition. One critic's review for Film Weekly, the guy wrote such a harsh review of this movie that the editor was like, I can't publish this until you remove these offensive personal remarks about Joan Crawford.
Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah.
We got one night.
One night in.
We got one. Where have all the cowboys gone? The editing booth. All right. Well,
yeah. Tell me what you got.
You did send me some good. I want to start with that.
Oh yeah.
This clip came from. I don't know specifically which one.
Yeah.
This is.
Some of them I didn't label.
That's okay. I'm going to try and figure out the original. They kind of. I'm sorry. I opened them all at once, so they kind of bleed into each other. Anyway, it's in a periodical of some sort. Mm-hmm. There's Edwin Schallert or Scallert.
Yeah, we're talking 1932 review here.
Yeah, I'm not on board with this again because we're not watching this in the context of the play.
No,
and maybe had we watched this after watching the play and what an iconic take, it's an unfair position she's in, and this Edwin fellow is kind of a pretty big dick to her.
Common theme.
So whoever has seen Jean Eagles,
I think it's
Jean Eagles, any other player in the role must be all but defeated ere she has begun. So no film actress. Oh my god!
She's begun.
So flowery. Undertook a more difficult or exacting task than that which falls to the lot of Joan Crawford. That she completely survives the test would be far too much to say. That she measures up to the occasion in many respects very capably is all to her credit. The first vision of her is, I think, the most disappointing. Oh, come on. I got to cut out of that and just say that aged like fucking milk. Here she battles all the Eagles' memories, and they are overwhelming for those who remember the star. Well, I don't.
I don't.
And I don't remember you.
That's so revealing of, again, I don't think people understood how big motion pictures were going to be.
Yeah, I think, then he goes on to say, the stage grants more latitude for an entrance. And Miss Eagles always made a sweeping one. Joan Crawford has to register the character far more gradually. After her earlier scenes, there is a material betterment in the impression that she makes. I don't think that she ever ceases to be Joan Crawford in the picture rather than Sadie Thompson. And I mean by this, it is far from being a perfect characterization, but within the limitations, it is a very interesting Crawford and different. The star's ideal background is a more glittering one, but this is a branching out into another realm and therefore intriguing as an experiment. So condescending.
A lot of that.
Kind of the general iteration of some of these clippings.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like that one was the most like kind of concise and colorful.
Totally.
In spite of my disagreement of it.
No.
This is kind of easy to dunk on it, Edwin. Thank you for your input.
Yeah. I mean, it's
yeah, I do have.
It is funny how like differently the wording in newspapers was. It's so much more flowery.
It's so well. That's. I mean, even now, that's part of. I guess. Now I feel like we're in this realm of
low.
People really value the social media.
Yeah.
I think even within the last. You jump back like a decade or more, people are still into the flowery. Maybe I'm more I'm conflating that more with like in the restaurant world. You think of like Jonathan Gold, and like he as a reviewer was so revered, and a lot of it was just because he was such a colorful.
I see.
He was so good at illustrating in his words, like taste and the senses. Whether or not I always agreed with his take on certain restaurants, it's another story, but he was a gifted writer. And so there's that aspect.
I mean, also like there's some, fast fact about how all newspapers are written at like a third grade reading level. And I feel like maybe
when someone throws in those bigger words.
Yeah, 1932, it's like, the bar was a little higher. Like you see a page from a newspaper in those days and it's like, holy fuck. Like
so
it's all text.
It's dense. Yeah, it's dense. That's quite a bit of writing.
That's just a clipping of like that's like one column that was 7 column page.
I read like 2 small paragraphs on a very long review, and that was just the snippet. I wanted to emphasize Joan because I feel like
really had things to say.
They had things to say.
I think there's just something so tragic that the experience filming was terrible.
Yeah,
and then
what the legacy
you get
is.
through it, and people hate it.
Yeah,
and then you're like, and she literally apologized to her fans.
Just what a whole. Mm-hmm. Making movies is
brutal
is hard.
Yeah.
I will say Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh yes,
90%.
Wow.
Critic side, 66% audience score.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I do want to give credit to there is a specific Rotten Tomatoes super reviewer, like a user, I wanted to shout out just because I liked how he led his. I won't read his whole review.
No, but
he gave a 3 out of 5 star, Antonius B. And I just liked that he opened with this Bible quote that I felt was salient. It was just, the rain falls incessantly in this movie, bringing to mind Matthew 5:45, quote, he sendeth rain on the just and the unjust alike, unquote. And then he goes into more. I just liked that quote. Ooh. I was like, that was a good little Bible quote you threw in there.
I'm wondering if Somerset Maugham, like, I wonder if maybe that's like the epigram or something that begins the story. Yeah. Maybe not. Maybe
it has that vibe of like, that's if Jordan Peele were to make this, that's how he'd open it, right?
Yeah, with some great proverb that like makes you go, ooh.
Something like the idea. Yeah. I like that because they're in that location in Pago Pago that like it is a bit of a Joan, stop biting Joan. Don't hurt Joan.
Yeah,
no.
Joan Crawford, the cat, literally tearing apart
her own
Joan
image.
Crawford book.
But just the idea
of can be only one,
right? There can only be one, right? Highlander rules. But the idea of the like it made me think of it is morally neutral, the space they're in,
yes,
and everything that's being volleyed back and forth is all this projection that they have. And so I thought that was actually pretty neat.
Almost like a bottle. I mean, like a bottle episode.
It's a bottle episode, but a movie. That's
I really do think this look, I want to see it like not necessarily front and center. I just want to see this at like a Halloween party on a TV show. Like I want to see this like, anyway.
I to that I would say again on Letterboxd, it's the people's base.
What do they have to say?
Review it. Just everybody's all about her entrance in this pretty much.
Is that funny how the critic is like
critic? I wanted to emphasize that this was such a long-winded review that I read just a clip of from this periodical at the time that it came out versus its legacy now, and truly the takeaway that people have watching this in the modern lens is
what an entrance.
Fucking Joan.
Yeah.
Isabel, 4 stars. Joan Crawford's first entrance in this movie is one of the best sequences, TBH.
Yeah.
And then Carolina 3.5. 1, I'm so glad this movie was pre-code. 2, anyone who dismisses Joan's acting ability can fight me. 3, up there with Rita Hayworth's entrance in Gilda as the best entrance made by a character. Bam, bam. Wow. I really like that. And I liked yours too. I feel like you gave her more credit character-wise than I would have. You gave her 3 stars. Don't try to outfox a fox. I feel like looking at it in the bigger picture of like moralistically speaking, like
you think you know, but you don't.
You think shit. You don't know. All men are the same.
Little foxes.
Yeah,
we're all just a bunch of little monsters.
And this also kind of it reminded me of Little Foxes in the sense that it's again a lot of these films were adapted from the plays, and again this whole.
And like this one, I know
thing.
This play was written by men, and even the Little Foxes being like a Lillian Hellman story. Like, I mean, there's something so interesting about the nature of adaptation, and you can see there's certain movies from this time that are adapted that were these big hits, but I still just don't love because they still feel so stagey to me. Well, like when we watched Dinner at 8, it's like that was like this was way more engaging than that.
I'm glad we watched that, but also it
was a little it was a little sleepy for me.
That's that vibe I feel like can tend to happen because they're still finding the medium, I guess. And
like the front page was a play about being in a newsroom and reporters, and it was so realistic, and Ben Hecht wrote the play, and then he adapted into the screenplay, and then it was the same story that becomes His Girl Friday. It's supposed to be it is this important movie, but I watch it and I'm like, I'm asleep. Sorry.
We've moved on.
It's tough.
That's how I felt watching 2001: A Space. I'm going to keep dunking on it, but obviously I recognize it's a great film.
Oh, no.
Obviously, I know it's incredible, blah, blah, blah.
Well,
I am still thinking about it.
Yeah,
like, it has resonated. Like, it's more of just me being a troll and like a shit poster.
It can be fun to.
I know it's incredible.
It can be fun to inflame people, though.
A little. It's like
I
think part of why I joke at it or poke at it is because I obviously recognize that it's like a work of art, and it's considered one of the, if not the greatest film ever created. So it's why I find it funny to be able to. That's why I like poking fun at it a little bit.
I think
that's why I like going, gee, like that's just me being a bad comedian. I'm going lowest common denominator with my comparisons, I guess.
Fair. The broader court of public opinion. It's like, like clearly you're in the minority, so it's like, why would anybody be upset then? You know what I mean? Because it's like, well,
right. I think because people, it's like
put
this
a crack
personal, it's this personal connection I guess people have, or they feel this sort of like transcendence, and it's like, you not liking the thing they liked is like you spitting on them. I spit on your space baby. I spit on your.
The space baby is a little silly. I'm just gonna say
I was thoroughly perturbed when it made eye contact with me at the end.
Yeah.
I was thoroughly perturbed. I think that was intentional, though. I think it was supposed to perturb me.
Yeah, I hear that.
It feels silly, but it's also like, I get it.
Some other movies that were out at the same time as Rain.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't know any of these really. There's The Big Stampede, Hat Check Girl.
Sorry, that's fine. Hat Check Girl.
Girl Grief.
Oh my goodness.
Passport to Hell. Betty Boop's Ups and Downs. The Phantom of Crestwood, and Touchdown Mickey.
Those are some of the best like titles of all the times you've done this. That's probably my favorite.
Hat Check Girl.
Hat Check Girl.
That feels like
Road to Hell.
Passport to Hell.
Passport to Hell. Betty Boop's Mishaps. It's really funny.
It was a wide. The tent was very large. 1932.
There's a lot of stuff to choose.
This wasn't even all of it. This just.
I'm not gonna lie. Actually, with that kind of lineup, I probably would have. I would have poo-pooed
Rain.
I would have poo-pooed Rain. Well, Rain also has just like the disadvantage of like the most vague name.
And it's super serious. But again, apparently at that time everyone knew the name. So I don't fucking know. Whatever. That shit faded fast.
Yeah, dude.
That's all I can say. And this did not. A little bit of information about Louis Millstone. He was born Milstein. He changed it when he became a U.S. citizen. He's a Moldovan American film director. He was born September 30th, 1895. Woo. We're getting into another century, guys.
Shit.
He made 37 films over 38 years. He grew up near the Black Sea. He was in a Jewish family who were very invested in their son's education. So his primary school's education was really strong. He studied several languages. However, he liked the theater. And his parents were like, no. You need to be an engineer. So,
Interesting.
I mean, even back then, same tension.
Yeah.
And so
Always.
they send him to Saxony, which, right, Germany, I don't know if it's, is it unified yet? Yeah, it might be. I don't know my German unification history. I know.
Well, you better work on it. I'm not.
We're gonna lose all the people in
Everybody
Saxony.
in Saxony.
They're all pissed at us. We don't get to all those principalities in Germany are so cool, like Bavaria, Saxony.
Sure.
Like anyway.
Oh, I know about Bavarian
Pretzels?
chocolate. Oh, pretzels, yes, and pretzels,
And chocolate.
Good food in that little
And beer.
beer.
Anyway, so they send him to Saxony to study engineering, but he basically flunks out because he's just going to the theater all the time. He doesn't go to any of his classes.
Oops.
And so I don't know exactly how much money he had in his pocket, but he at this point buys a one-way transatlantic ticket to the U.S. He's like, I'm taking a boat. I'm out of here. I'm gone. I didn't get much information about his family life or how they felt about it or if he told them. I don't know. And when he arrives in Hoboken, New Jersey, finally on the U.S. shore, he's just turned 18.
Wow.
He takes a lot of odd jobs. He worked as a janitor, salesman, lace machine operator. I guess lace was very much in demand at some point there.
The early 1900s, sure.
Yeah.
1910s.
Yeah, Victorian-ish stuff. Well, that's kind of dying off.
You're like, we're just leaning
It's like
into
ragtime.
I'm just thinking, this is like post Belle Epoque or something.
Yeah.
I don't
No,
know.
you're right. Because it's like
the lacy hats.
he would have
or
been
whatever.
about, because it would have been at least like 1915-ish.
Yeah.
Maybe 1913 because
And
he was
then
18.
World War One. It's 1918.
Oh, yeah.
right?
1914 is when
Or
it started.
1914. Gotcha.
So, yeah.
1918 is when it
so
ended.
he really
right?
got out of Eastern Europe at the right time. Right.
Yeah,
before the-
actually, that
I
was
mean,
that was pretty fucking savvy.
I mean, whether he knew it or not,
As
good
just
timing.
good timing.
Good timing. And he finally fell into work as a portrait photographer. Also something called a theater photographer, which I don't exactly know what that means. If it means like you do the theatrical production PR type stuff.
I imagine he just did whatever they told him
whatever
to.
they told him to. Okay. I've seen this term more than
Sure.
once, and now I'm like, oh wait, is this something? Anyway.
I only take pictures of the theater. Get out of the picture.
Yeah, like
Get out of the
it's
picture.
only of the theater,
Only of the
or
theater.
like for the I need more information anyway.
Oh yeah, she looks good. She looks good today.
Yeah. So World War I breaks out like a flu, and he joins the Signal Corps, but he's stationed in D.C., New York. He never really.
Oh, interesting.
You know.
Okay.
So he edits combat footage and films it. He ends up being stationed in the photographic unit, which is funny because at this time in the photographic unit, Victor Fleming and Joseph von Sternberg are also in the same unit. So these were people who would become great directors.
They had their own little film school.
Well, and the same
during
thing
the
kind of
war.
happened during World War II. Like there were a
Yeah.
bunch of filmmakers who ended up in this photographic unit because we need propaganda films or we need
Right.
footage or we need to see what is going on. So there's always a
Right.
need for that, which I always think is kind of
It's interesting.
crazy and
Yeah. There's a market for it.
yeah, apparently the army needed it. When he gets out of the army, someone refers him to, basically he gets hired as an assistant editor in Hollywood. Somebody gets him, it's like, oh,
Right.
take this guy. He was great. And then he just starts taking every kind of film job he can get. He's the assistant to a director, he's an editor, he's a writer, he's an AD. And then he started gaining this reputation as being a film doctor. He was really skilled at salvaging movies that were a mess, I guess, through editing, which I think is interesting.
Well, just thinking about him just kind of scrapping and bouncing around and working his way up. It's a shame that he and Joan didn't get along.
I know,
better
right?
Because there's so much.
So much in common there.
Yeah, there's just a similar sort of just like.
I mean,
so
many...
little, not pulling yourself up by your bootstraps per se,
because
but
we know
just
that's
like,
impossible
that's
physically.
But what's like an equivalent term that kind of evokes
No, I know.
a similar ideology?
Yeah, I
guess.
know what you're saying.
The similar idea of just being fucking scrappy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The term hustling has been ruined a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, well, it was like when we were learning about Cassandra Peterson,
ambition
before she became Elvira. She was a hat check girl.
Right.
Could have been about her.
Right. Could have.
I mean, she was a lot of different things.
Right.
While she was doing Groundlings and everything else.
There's something to connect over there.
You know what though? It's funny how many stories are like this though. Like we have read about and talked about a lot of different directors, and they're not all like this, but
there's a lot of that commonality. And then I wonder too at that point how and I shouldn't project, but I think about it just in I guess my own life or what I've seen around me, just how much of that becomes internalized, where it just feels so very like Mandingo, like very like it's just us and half a you, me, and half a pull stick, and only one of us gets to, move on or whatever. Like that. That sad idea, instead of collaborating, connecting, how much of it is just feeling as though you have to continually like get out of my way.
I mean, similar as you're right, like very similar to Joan in the ability to keep going and to survive. But, again, I wonder if it would sort of just be like, well, of course, and like from both of them,
right?
Like,
right. Well, yeah, obviously,
like, what do you know about survival? Like, this was, so he was fixing movies, but he hadn't directed anything yet. And so he went to Jack Warner. He's like, listen, like, I'll give you the script for free. Like, I wrote this script, just let me direct it. Classic move. And he's like, of course, yes, because men get all the chances. And he creates this film called Seven Sinners, 1925. He's 29 years old at this point. He gets a lot more assignments after that. And the big thing that happens is this film called Two Arabian Nights. He wins the Academy Award for Best Director over Charlie Chaplin, who was nominated for The Circus, which is a great movie, but Chaplin got his flowers.
We got a snub.
Yeah. It's funny that I brought up the front page earlier because he did the front page in 1931. He also did All Quiet on the Western Front in 1930, which is considered his masterpiece. And it was considered just really remarkable in its use of sound effects and tracking shots.
Do you know what year that came out?
1930.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, interesting. They just came out with the
new one. I know.
I don't know if I want to. It sounds so fucking bleak.
Well, it is a bleak story. I mean,
right.
But Eric Maria.
Maybe they'll change the ending.
Yeah, make it. He lives. Everybody lives.
Everybody lives. There's
the sun comes out.
Party at the end.
they play soccer.
Yeah.
Well, All Quiet on the Western Front won Best Picture and Best Director, so he won two Best Director Academy Awards.
He hit a peak.
He got some stuff done.
He got some shit done.
And it's after this, he does Front Page. Then he comes into Rain, and this is what he had to say about it after the fact. He said, I thought audiences were ready for a dramatic. By the way, I don't agree with a lot of this. Like,
so
I feel like
no, but you're reading the quote.
I wish I had a bell for you to ring every time you're like, because
that's okay. I'll just make noises.
Okay. I thought audiences were ready for a dramatic form and that we could now present a 3-act play on screen. But I was wrong. People will not listen to narrative dialogue. They will not accept the kind of exposition you use on stage. I started the picture slowly, too slowly, I'm afraid. You can't start a picture slowly. You must show things happening.
Wow, he sounds like Lydia Tarr losing touch with his own history a little bit. Just like that level of condescension of just like, oh, the plebeian, oh, they wouldn't know art if it hit him in the face. I
think what's like revealing of this is how many terms are very absolutist. Like, you can't do this, you shouldn't, I was wrong.
I wonder at what point that he internalized that black and white thinking and just how it's part of that like survivalist struggle. I wonder like where it turns into a little bit of like it's what helps you get up there, but it's just as much what can tear you down.
Absolutely.
You have to temper that
it's
sort
a lot of shit
you have to temper that type of ego and that type of deliberate separation between you and the rest, because on one hand, that kind of ambition, that type of I'm special will drive you, but then when you get to a certain point, you lose touch with where you came from.
And it definitely feels like
not giving people credit.
And artists in general, it's like you're probably better off, instead of saying this never happens, or this is like, well, it doesn't often happen.
Sure.
I think we have a tendency to be really hyperbolic, right, when we're wanting to make a point, but the truth is never always.
There's no absolute, the
only absolute
only a Sith deals in absolutes.
The only absolute is that there are none.
Right.
That's kind of like, there's no whatever.
Yeah, Obi-Wan said it, and he's right.
Yeah, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
I also want to say, Millstone, so during the war, he helped the government make a lot of propaganda, and I'm not saying this like to be a shit. He did a lot of pro-Soviet propaganda because we were allies with the Russians during the Second World War.
Right.
But immediately after the war ended, anything that you had in your past that remotely resembled pro-Russian anything was suddenly now suspect because we were entering the
So he
Red
did all
Scare.
that work, and then all of a sudden it has to
And
be.
it just
he has
fucked
to,
him over.
Yeah.
So he got called in front of the House of Un-American Activities Committee.
That's unfair.
Yeah.
Come on.
He refused to testify. And somehow he was not fully blacklisted. He did work, but it's questionable. Like they said
How much that set him back.
gray listed is kind of the term.
Yeah.
Like where it's like, well, he did make other films though. And I want to call these out because they're not terrible. He did in 1939 Of Mice and Men. He did The Red Pony, The Strange Love of Martha Ivers, which is great. Barbara Stanwyck's in it. Pork Chop Hill. He did the original Ocean's 11. And he did several episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
So he actually did a lot.
He did. He did work after that.
He did pretty good.
But yeah, I think it's a complicated figure. And I
It's just yeah. I don't know. We just watched Tar and stuff, but just it reminds me of that a little bit.
Oh,
the idea of like you hit the top of the mountain and then, shit catches up with you, whether justified or not, and then you have to like You got to
like account for it.
You have to account and recalibrate.
Yeah.
And then there you go. It's not a perfect correlation. I think
watching
them back to back.
I think there's something interesting, about this director who, he's got this immigrant's point of view. He's also got this very like survivor mentality. Like this is clearly somebody who scrapped and fought. And
there's things to respect, and then there's things that are like, well, that's gonna bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
There's like a stubborn quality.
There's what people tell you are, and then there's what you believe you are,
and what you're fighting against versus what you end up internalizing.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about like he approached Jack Warner and got his first directing gig because he was like, here's a free script. Mm-hmm. But Jack Warner is like the same. I mean, a total asshole. Famous asshole, and he would tell people like, oh, you're not some great director, you're a journeyman, and like stop reaching. You don't have that. Like he was just such a like dismissive piece of shit and would cut you down because he could make more money off you if he can control you like that,
Sounds like he was a pretty good businessman.
He was good at manipulating people.
Yeah.
He was one of the last dinosaurs. Who's your best supporting player?
On one hand, I did like O'Hara. I've brought him up time and again because I more so like the way that character is written. It's not so in your face wanting to like rescue her from the pole type of thing.
No, I agree with you.
Not quite like the the Bible thumping character. I think there's something a little more humanistic about that approach, and more so in the way he's written.
It's the script, yeah.
Right. Versus as far as performance goes, it's a little campy, but I kind of liked the smarmy wife.
Oh yeah.
And I liked
Beulah Bondi.
And I liked at the end when she's like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And then
well, I guess I feel sorry
for everybody in the world. It's a great little it's an interesting exchange because that didn't have to happen, and there's something just about like that confrontation.
Yes.
And like
that they're both still in their like shoes,
Yeah, I liked that.
I think my favorite, I sort of tipped it earlier, but Dr. Robert MacPhail or something, played by Matt Moore. I liked him. I think immediately he kind of had like a dime store David Niven quality. He seemed like he was the kind of permissive, cool dude who was like
he seemed like he was picking up on stuff. You know? He would comment on things that sort of that removed quality. Like he could see what the missionary was laying down. He saw through that shit pretty quick.
I wrote a line down. He said, he says, there may be differences of opinion to what's right.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck
like
yeah,
that.
dude.
I
like
that.
I'm like, I like you.
Meanwhile, I like the lady. Well, I liked one that was, don't look at her. Don't even look at her.
Don't even look at her.
Don't even look at her.
Oh, I know.
That was great.
And God, so good.
It's so childish, but fun. Anyway, that's...
I think
I'm pretty. That's I'm spent.
I'm spent too.
But that's good to watch.
Would you watch it again?
I mean, if it was on, I would.
Yeah.
I'd probably
It's
engage.
like a Turner Classic Movie situation. It's
Yeah.
like if they put it on a day devoted to Joan Crawford, I'm like, oh yeah.
It's extremely available.
I would, yeah. Talk about that actually more.
Or just you know, it's in the public domain, and so you can watch it. Like literally on Wikipedia, it links to
The
just
film.
a full recording of it, and then on YouTube, there's a number of uploads of that, and then on Tubi, it's free. Is how we watched it.
I don't, you know, it may vary in quality across those platforms.
Perhaps.
I think what we saw may not have been it wasn't a great print. You know, it felt like a.
Oh, I don't know. I liked all the commercials. And, you know, interestingly, the movie felt like it was broken up, like appropriately
paced,
for the
right.
commercials.
It seems like
it felt like
tried.
a TV movie almost.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So
thank you for listening.
yeah,
You can email us at abreathoffreshmovie@gmail.com.
yeah.
There's some other places, but
That's the main one, I guess.
that's the main one.
Yeah.
Watch Rain because it's very available.
It's so available.
And then tell us what you think.
Yeah, I think it's worth the watch. I mean, we you know,
I'd like
we
to-
dunked on
yeah.
some stuff, but like I think, like again, the ending really saves it, and
Yeah.
I watch See How They Run, and they make a similar point. The ending's what matters. The
That's
ending matters
true.
more than the rest of the story.
If you don't have an ending, you don't have a movie.
Versus if you have a strong ending and the rest is blah, that's okay.
Because the
that
ending.
can be okay.
Yeah, can.
There you go. And this is
M.
I
Night
think,
Shyamalan
kind of-
knows about that. Sorry.
It's been a minute since he's known about that, I guess.
Yeah.
He has in the past known about that.
Yeah. I shouldn't dunk on him. He's fine.
No, it's cool because he is actually trying to put more original story. I did
Yeah.
watch Old recently.
Yeah. I've been hearing. No, I think
It was okay.
I think he's gone all the way around the sun at this point, and it's like we're kind of back to like, oh, all right,
Yeah.
you're still with us. Okay.
I think we're also just like sick and tired of the franchises.
He was really touted too. Like, remember when the Sixth
It's
Sense?
because the Sixth Sense was so good.
I mean, and I don't think that
It's so
was like
tough.
that wasn't his fault. That, you know, I mean, it's like,
How dare he be so good out the gate?
I'm just saying,
like-
it's a lot of pressure that
Yeah.
everyone put on that next movie, and then
It's
when it
true.
wasn't like exactly what people wanted.
Was Unbreakable the next
Yeah.
one? Which actually was pretty good.
No, it is, but
was
people
like a-
didn't like it as much as Sixth Sense.
I mean, that's a tough.
And then
Signs. I remember
Signs.
Signs, which I really liked at the
I
time.
liked it. That whole scene with the Mexican kid's birthday party.
I
and
mean,
they
he's very good at building tension.
Yes.
Now this is about him. Anyway, we're sorry about it.
Check it out. Yep.